Got Ben Pouladian in the wings. We're gonna bring him up here again. Gonna run it back. Ben, welcome back to the show.
Running it back. Welcome. Good. Glad to be back with you guys. I missed you guys over the weekend, and I'm happy to be here again.
Yeah, and you were busy over the weekend. I mean, you were furiously typing up this letter to AMD CEO Lisa Su, which I want to focus on. Like, I was reading through this again, had to use all the LLMs at my disposal to catch up on chip architecture. But I think I'm down, and this is very interesting because you say there's about $500 billion in capex in AI data center spend allocated based upon self-reported unverified vendor benchmarks, and you have some open questions. So give me the TLDR of like your takeaways from the AMD conference and presentation and the overall thesis of like what you want to find out.
Yeah, basically, I'm a pretty well-known NVIDIA shareholder. So I was at the AMD AI event a few weeks ago in San Francisco, and then they put on the screen that their CPUs, 20% better than NVIDIA Vera CPU on single core performance. And I was like, okay, like let's bring the competition back because back in the 90s and 2000s it was always Intel versus AMD on the CPU stuff. Now on the AI data center front, I think it's NVIDIA versus AMD on the CPU. So I went through their whole deck to see like what they were talking about, and then I couldn't find the chip that they were talking about. There was no model number, no wattage, no price, and it's not even on their price list. And then this Tom's Hardware also said the same thing, that this chip doesn't exist. So I was like, you know what? Like, this is something important. I reached out to a few friends in the industry and I said, like, am I like making sense here? Or am I seeing things? Like, no, you're right, Ben. Like, this isn't anywhere. So I said, you know what? They're reporting earnings on Tuesday. Let me use my social media and publish a letter to see if she can respond and see what it is. I'm just open to discussion. When people put up these slides of all these footnotes, I just want people to back it up with like real data. Because when I ran my LED lighting company, we submitted everything to like a third party testing agent place, and they would measure lumens per watt. And then in this particular case, or like fudging the wattage number in different areas to kind of make the performance look better or worse, or changing the metrics, and it's a little weird. And in this era, like, yeah, spending $500 billion, you want to know what the apples to apples comparison are, because every watt matters in a data center because you're so power constrained.
And that gets into, you put out 4 questions for CEO Dr. Lisa Su, hopefully maybe to answer or shed light on this tomorrow. AMD earnings call tomorrow, so we'll get some answers. But lay this out for me. Dive a little bit deeper into this. I don't know if we call it like the mystery chip, but like we don't have the hard data is basically the point. What do you think the chip is? But like, what do we not know about it?
Maybe this chip doesn't exist. So if it doesn't exist, like, tell us like what's closest to it, or map it out for us so we can kind of understand. Don't have people go through all these like tiny footnotes like in a maze to kind of trying to figure out what this product is, but make the claim that you're 20% better than NVIDIA, right? Because NVIDIA has also built a heritage of CPUs, which people don't know about. Grace Hopper was the first CPU that they worked on, but they didn't really market it because the whole AI revolution, if you look at all the things that Jensen has been talking about all these years, it's like the CPU is dead, Moore's law is dead, long live the GPU. But in reality, you need both to coexist. You need the CPU to kind of tell the GPUs what to do and have that orchestration to work together. And the question is like, which one is better and which one has higher performance? And if you go back in time, like I said, the late 90s, early 2000s, it was always like AMD versus Intel on which CPU is better on performance and megahertz and all those things. And I think now we're back to that rivalry again between these two companies, which is exciting because I think rivalries create better performance and you, it serves the customers better in that aspect.
And this gets into kind of like a standard reporting discrepancy. You talk about like this inconsistent denominators when reporting chip performance. And this extends also, I believe, to NVIDIA in that there's some like it's not we just it's very difficult to compare apples to apples when comparing the performance of these chips. Um, I guess what does this mean at the data center level? Because most of our audience is like power acquisition, power deals, but that's downstream of this like very, very, very different business of like chip stats.
Yeah,
So what
because
does this mean like at the data center?
they pushed 600 watts on throughput and then 400 watts on agents per watt, but there's like no wattage for the single core. So like obviously, if you're supposedly saying you're using less watts and outputting more, then you're better than the other guy. But what if you're actually using more watts but not and hiding it, right? And that I think that for like a data center designer or owner, that wattage leakage, right, can negatively affect their profitability because their energy costs go up and they don't have enough power. I think that's what people really need to understand is we're super power constrained and every watt matters and that needs to be accounted for on the specs of your products.
I mean, does that this have the potential to derail, you know, uh, the expansion plans some of these companies have? I'm thinking about even just modeling out capex. If the wattage isn't totally aligned with what you're expecting to spec for your data center, that could cause some kinks in the road. Do you think that's a legitimate issue for some of these operators, or do
It
you
is
think?
because when you're talking about like rack scale deployments, you have like one rack times like 1,000 or whatever is in the data center. So all these things multiply in scale. So the question is like, what is it? I need to know that number and that performance because I'm designing this data center that's going to basically be built in a year and a half based on your specs today and the load and the wattage and the power supply and everything. Everything has to kind of match up. If not, you're putting the operator in a bad position because they end up deploying it and then it's going to end up costing more than what they actually thought it was going to be. And then like you're negative on your margins.
So AMD reports tomorrow.
Yeah.
Um, do you expect them to answer or clarify anything regarding this chip? I mean, you've got four questions, publish the subscores of the chips, unified denominators, maybe tell us what chip or, whatever. Do you expect them to maybe address any of these open questions that you have? And then if they do, uh, to what degree does that add, like, give investors clarity going forwards?
I'll be listening. And recently, I've had an influx of AMD employees start following me on X right now. They're all in these different departments coming out of the woodwork. So it's definitely making the rounds. I think around San Jose and Silicon Valley. It's a good question, and people when they work hard on these products in these different groups, and it's a lot of data and numbers. Like at the end of the day, you want an apples to apples comparison on what you're up against. And if you're kind of moving the target or the denominator to make yourself look better, and 20% is a big number for these types of things, it kind of discourages you. So how do we level the playing field for everybody to kind of play nice? Like I have nothing against Lisa Su or AMD. I love it. I also had a question for NVIDIA to talk about their memory and architecture, what they're doing. Everyone needs to kind of contribute for this to work in this ecosystem because the way I look at it is, we're all on the same team. It's us against China at this point. So we all need to win. And let's make sure the people buying these products are also winning and getting the right product that they were looking for. I think that's the most important.
You referenced like the Intel AMD CPU race of before my time.
Uh,
And
yeah, I'm
yeah.
kind of old, I guess.
Yeah. And uh and you call this quote the best CPU race in a decade. Um, what are your thoughts on x86 holding the data center crown? Do we see Vera at the beginning of the ARM takeover for hosting these nodes? I don't know. Give you some color on what we can look forward to for this competition.
Yeah, I mean, the whole x86 thing sort of died. I think you can also look at what Apple did with they designed Intel out of their MacBooks. So like pretty much every new MacBook has Apple Silicon on it with their own cores, and it's all ARM based. NVIDIA did the same thing, and now with agentic AI, you have ARM, which came out with its own AI CPU, and then AMD supposedly has 3 different CPUs, and then Intel, this whole run up that you see in the stock prices, they're able to charge more for CPUs because there's so much demand in that. But the question is just throwing more CPUs at the problem might not be it. The question is, how do you design the CPU to be the most performant in an agentic long horizon task workload for AI? And to really do that, I think you need to have the roadmap to make it purpose built. That's why, not to be conflicted, but I think Vera Rubin was designed for that. And the roadmap that NVIDIA has for their CPU products, I think, is well versed for long horizon agentic task loads. And I think that's where it's headed with that. And then I think they shrink that to some extent, and they put it into the RTX personal computer that's coming out, or for enterprises and offices. And I think once you create that like scalable solution, you kind of see all that working. And then this is just my like hypothesis. Sometimes you just have to kind of think outside the box and dream a little bit. I think these CPUs and these Vera CPUs right now, they're orchestrating virtual agents, or like basically like LLMs to do things. Eventually, these CPUs will be orchestrating physical AI, which is like robots. So the agentic like the robots are basically running loops for you, say in a manufacturing floor, like pick up this widget, drill it in, test it, close it. Like that's a loop, right? And you need a CPU to orchestrate that, like a master computer with all these robots running in concert at the robot. Who's doing that operating system? Who's running it? I mean, I think that's like another NVIDIA type of play.
And that kind of becomes a lot of this is focused on memory and where this memory sits among the GPU and the chip. Um, and this may not be like the best closing question, but you talk a little bit about memory power and how this is kind of obscured, like the LPDDR5X versus like an unpublished MRDIMM figure. Like I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. But as like context becomes king here, or and maybe I don't know if you agree with that, as context often kind of becomes king for these long horizon tasks, like memory power becomes very important. Give me some color as to like what we could hope to see in the memory like stats game, especially with regards to power draw. Um, and hopefully, can we expect it to be more standardized and transparent to perhaps incentivize a little more competition? I don't know. What are your thoughts here?
I think AMD and NVIDIA made opposite memory bets. AMD gets its bandwidth from MRDIMM and modules with buffers that have to be powered and cooled. NVIDIA uses low latency, or uses low power phone lineage memory. So neither company counts a single watt of their headline power, and that's where they differ the most. So it's kind of like 2 different schools of memory thought. I don't know which one is right or which one is better. So that's where it's kind of hard to balance out and figure out which one makes the most sense. One obviously has buffers in it and it's cooled, and the other one uses like the same types of memory that you use in like cell phones. So who's right, we'll see with that.
Maybe zooming out for a final take, we're heading into earnings week here. We're going to cover a lot of the PowerShells, NeoClouds, data center earnings. What you probably look a little bit more at the like chip level, the actual upstream production, but I'm curious, like when you see these types of open questions on AMD, will AMD's any information they do or don't give tomorrow, will that inform any opinions you have about the rest of the actual like data center operators and construction companies?
I think demand is still outstripping supply. The question from a data center operator is to make sure they have the right stack and equipment to eventually, hopefully, operate profitably. Because I think your biggest cost is energy, right? So I don't see energy costs going down. So if they're scaling up and it's a finite amount of energy, what is your wattage load and how is it all working? Because you don't want to get overloaded or have devices take more energy than they say they do on their specs or whatever it is to have those issues. And I think that's something they need to mitigate. And in this situation, because there's so much demand, like everybody is getting business. I don't see like a big slow, like it's not like a short report or anything like that. It's just like a question to just bring to the industry to just level the playing field. So even if there's other startups that claim these sort of things, like kind of use the same metrics. So there's an apples to apples comparison on these.
Ben, thank you so much for your insights. I hope you get the answers you want tomorrow.
Come on, Lisa, tell me what's going on.
Yeah, Lisa, tag Lisa in the comments, everybody. Ben, thanks so much for your time. Maybe we'll probably run it back soon. So
Let's
cheers.
go. Let's go. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
You
Thanks,
too.
Ben.
You too. All right, bye-bye.
Kind of a renaissance podcast here, covering all things from PowerShells to Mongolia to AMD 86 and ARM trends. So